Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gaspero, and I'm really excited to talk to today's guest. He's in a location that I've never spoken to anyone who is actually in this country from where I am in Delaware. So I'm as the Comic Book Yeti Cryptid Creator Corner goes international, but we're going to talk about his comic book, Hunters of Sheydim, and it's coming out, or will be out soon, with Golem Press. I'm so excited. But coming to us from Israel is Jeff Marvin. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hey, Jimmy. I'm good. It's good to see you.
Did I say that right? Is it Hunters of Sheydim?
Well, okay, so you could say it one of two ways. I learned this recently. So apparently in Hebrew it's Sheydim. So as you see it on the book, because I have it here, see, so it's got the Shay part there. I don't know if it's backwards, but and then for I guess with Muslim, the pronunciation is Sheydim. So
Okay.
Either way, it kind of works, whichever fits your fancy.
All right. So Hunters of Sheydim, Hunters of Sheydim. So yeah, Melissa Mazzaros, who from Don't Hide PR, Melissa's great. Melissa helped set this up.
Fantastic.
She sent over. Oh, Melissa is awesome. I've interviewed Melissa early days of the podcast. I interviewed Melissa.
Oh, wow.
And she was great. But she sent over a copy of this. I got to read this, and this is one of those comics that was like right in my wheelhouse. I just interviewed someone recently who's working on like one of the supernatural comics with Dynamite, Preeti Chibber, and I've seen every episode of Supernatural. I love that show. I love anything that is kind of in that lore of mythology, demons, like that type of stuff, and especially an area that I'm not super familiar with. I was raised Catholic, which is every Catholic who no longer practices. That's what we have to say. I was raised Catholic, but I went to Catholic grade school, high school, even Catholic college. So I was raised with all of that in terms of my like religious background, but in terms of I guess the Jewish side of it, and those characters, because you borrow both from like Christian tradition, but really it's also very similar, I guess, in terms of some of the aspects in the Jewish tradition. But there are elements of this that I wasn't familiar with, and I really love how there's a mix of language in this book. There's a ton of stuff to really dig into with your story here. And what I really love is that in the version of it that I had gotten, there's like a little bit of like background that kind of sets the stage for the story and let you know who some of the characters are. And it really does a nice job. Like, it almost acts like the Star Wars crawl, to kind of like set the stage for everything that's going on. I just thought that was,
that was on purpose.
yeah, give me a sense of
Thank you.
what I was getting into, and all these. There's a lot of characters in here who I'd kind of like heard the names before, like Asmodeus, certainly Lucifer, Moloch, but yeah, you've really kind of done a ton of world building to set up this world, and I really loved it. Really loved the story of the twins, Lucia and Kat, and
Catarina.
yeah, I thought it was great. Catarina. Yeah. So why don't you tell listeners who might not be familiar with it, like what the story is all about, and then I got a ton of questions about digging in to like how you set up this world and all the different characters and the demons and all that stuff. I think is great. But it's you and artist R.D. Brown, and yeah, what can listeners expect when they order their copy of Hunters of Sheydim?
What we were trying to do, I think, was you have the Baal Shem Tov, which is the the Jewish equivalent of Jewish demon hunters. And we start off with a group of demon hunters from different religions. We have the Qital al-Jinn, which is the Muslim group, and then we have the Malleus Maleficarum, which is the Christian demon hunting group. And they actually form an alliance called the Triumvirate, and it's a very shaky alliance, but they've been sort of have this alliance for about 10 years, and then it just all falls apart. Asmodeus is a demon that they had previously trapped in Ganomen, which is in Jewish lore it's the demon version of hell. It's sort of a demon. It's sort of a dimensional place. It's not like heaven, hell is like these constructs. They're sort of outside of reality. And so you have Ganomen, and then of course you have Shemaim that also shows up in there, which is the Jewish heaven. And Asmodeus is released from Ganomen, and all hell breaks loose as he and his demons with Moloch and Azazel and Lucifer hunt down and try to kill as many of the demon hunters from all groups, but mostly the Baal Shem Tov that they can for revenge. And so it's really, this first book is the girls and Eli, who is their mentor, Rabbi Eli, and his wife Sarah are just eviscerated. They're having to go on the run. The hunters become the hunted, and they're just trying to survive basically in this book.
I want to say the action scenes are wonderful. R.D. Brown,
He's fantastic.
I mean,
yeah.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And that's kind of like the neat trick of this is, you set up the world, and you still though have a lot of things to kind of explain and talk about, because Lucia and Catarina are, they have a mission. They're also trying to figure out exactly, what is going on.
Sure.
And there are some characters introduced who they have to explain, like when Dane shows up later on, they have to kind of explain what some of these things are. But the two of you have really created a really nice balance. It's, the pacing of it is fantastic, and the action scenes are just wonderful. I mean, there are just some tremendous, there's just some tremendous stuff going on, because they have to, the demons, these winged creatures, they are fighting them, and there's like flaming swords. There's I think Dane has a gun when he comes in. Like, there's just all kinds of like great stuff going on in terms of all like the action, and it is like, high octane, go with some of those scenes are wonderful. It never gets bogged down in the lore though. Like when there are moments to breathe and we kind of see some flashbacks, we go back to right around the time of World War I. There's some flashbacks, I think, to like 1914, 15, 16.
Lithuania.
Yeah, in Lithuania. And it is kind of nice to get like a moment to breathe in between the action, and like you really use every panel to kind of like flesh out this story and this history. I just thought that was really wonderful, and it made it, the action scenes made it a lot of fun. Like Lucia and Catarina are, like, RD draws them great. They're just they're fun to watch do what they do, and they're very athletic and acrobatic, and like the fight scenes are phenomenal.
Thank you. No, I can't take any of that credit. He really just blew it out of the park for us. I mean, the trouble we always knew when we were looking for an artist and trying to figure out what to do is the action stuff obviously, was complex in the way we wanted to have it shown, and I wanted that realism. But obviously capturing the Jewish elements and nailing that visual ideas, especially, and I always say this is Shemaim. Shemaim was key. Like, for Jewish audiences, look it up. If you go online and try to find images of Shemaim, especially the Enoch, from the book of Enoch, and his description of Shemaim, you will not find a visual almost anywhere except for in our book. And so that was the real test. And of course, this is this fantastic artist. I don't know his religious background, but he's from Nashville, Tennessee, and he definitely did not have a Jewish background. So when he just and this was like almost first time we talked about it. We figured out how like what it would look like, and it was very descriptive because it was very descriptive in what Shemaim was supposed to look like. I was like, just make sure it doesn't look overtly Christian, because it really doesn't. It's a strange place. And he just nailed it, like first time out of the go. It was pretty incredible. And so things like that, he really grabbed onto a lot of the Jewish imagery and like with the temple that he drew for with Eli was standing out front of it a bit in the around the middle of issue 1. I mean, it's just incredible what he did, and I can't be any more pleased in how he was able to accomplish that, and then having our colorist Venetius Townsend just put the exclamation point on it. It just, I my wildest dreams, I never thought we could sort of visualize and see this come alive in the way I did. So,
and both letterers, I think you had 2 letterers who worked on this, but the lettering's great as well. I just want to go back up. The letterers are
Desi Cienti,
and Sinisa Matic,
and Sinisha Matic, and both of them. Desi is an old friend, and he's worked on all my previous books that I had worked on before, and he worked at DC for a long time, and I think he's doing Upper Deck, working with that Upper Deck right now with cards, and he's just fantastic. He knows how to put together a book. He's really good with logos and decals. He created the Hunters of Sheydim logo, and I love it. It's one of the best he's done so far. And so yeah, I just had a really great team, and my editor Ori Halan, who's also here in Israel. He has a comic book store, one of 2 comic book stores here in Israel, and he has one of them that's in Dizengoff in Tel Aviv. So I got really lucky that we were able to put together such a fantastic team, and I just can't wait for people to read the book. It's going to be really fun, I think.
It is really fun. Just another thing about the lettering, because Catarina and Lucia kind of can talk to each other, psychically or telepathically, however you want to say it. But there's also a lot of moments where you do the thing that comics does well, where you're kind of showing something, and then you have a different narrative description, and so you have a lot of like color text boxes, and all of that stuff works really well to tell the story. Like that's one of the keys in terms of like really good lettering. You're never confused. You never have to go back and like, who's saying this? Like all of that is like really done well. I thought the use of color along with the lettering for a lot of those text boxes like were really smart choices. And one of the kind of things in the comic book, I don't want to give like too much away, but I do want to say with I guess as Asmodeus, there is a section where Asmodeus, like you don't get an explainer beforehand. Like you there's no, hey, we're about to do this. It's just part of the story. But as you see with like the first like 1 or 2 panels, you realize that Asmodeus is now telling events from like Asmodeus's perspective, and it's so well done when it happens, and really puts like a very interesting spin on it, because then you kind of have, you do not have demons or these characters with, especially with Asmodeus, who are just doing these things out of pure like evil. There is some complexity to it. Not to say that they're like anti-heroes or good guys by any stretch of the imagination, but there is like there's some dimensionality to these characters, which I thought was, very interesting. You don't see a lot of that all the time. So I thought that was very smart, like when it was done and how it was done. When Asmodeus kind of gets his moment to tell his side of the story,
his perspective. Yeah, the Lucia stuff is well, I think one of the things that I really loved about doing it this way is that when you look at a lot of the Christian iconography of when you look at these characters like Asmodeus or Moloch or Azazel, Lucifer, I mean, obviously sometimes they're the same person or they're a bunch of different people, but they're usually just blatantly evil. I mean, obviously the show Lucifer and what Neil Gaiman did with Lucifer obviously making him a little nuanced in some way is sort of my try. And of course, I always used to say that I think he was looking at it from the Jewish perspective too, because in Jewish texts and in the Talmud and the Torah and a lot of these characters are not just blatantly evil, especially Asmodeus. Asmodeus is charismatic, is described in the Torah as this charismatic kind of guy who does awful things, but he also at some point was responsible for building the temple for Solomon. The question of whether or not he was coerced to do it is obviously open, but the fact that he did do that he is a Talmudic scholar, that is in the text. He is basically a rabbi, and he is somewhat of a proud Jew. It's not and there are many texts that suppose that he is the son of David, and one of the demon queens, one of the 4 demon queens, either Lilith, Agrat Bat Matleth, Nama, or Iseth. So, I incorporate a lot of those things into it because, Asmodeus, I look at it kind of like when you think of like Clash of the Titans. Remember Clash of the Titans from the 80s, where the gods they just mess around with stuff, right? They screw around. I mean, Zeus and they get
Yeah.
greedy, or they get jealous, and they
Right.
screw around with stuff. And so I kind of looked at it as like a lot of the Jewish demons are like that too. They have a lot of human qualities. They're flawed, and so for Asmodeus, he kind of has a perspective that people might be like, it may be maybe similar to maybe like a Thanos. Was Thanos right? Kind of ideal, but he has a perspective, and you're kind of like, oh well, okay. It's not just blatantly evil. Like Moloch is the only one I basically say has no redeeming value at all. He's just basically, I want to burn stuff and get
Yeah.
power out of it. That's it.
Yeah. One track mind, that guy.
One track. Yeah. No. Well, that's what makes it amusing between the 3 of them.
Yeah.
Lucifer doesn't get as much play in this book as he will in future books, if we hopefully can continue. But Azazel, I had so much fun writing Azazel, Moloch, and Asmodeus, and Azazel just playing everybody, like he just, and then using those 2 personalities against each other was just a lot of fun, and it's gonna get a little nuttier even in the second one that I'm writing right now. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's very exciting. You said that it was amusing, like watching those 3 characters kind of play against each other. Or play one against the other, whatever the case may be. I also I love the fun and the humor of this. It is a ton of action, and there's a lot of fun lore if that's what you're into, listeners. But yeah, Catarina and Lucia like have a great chemistry and like a really fun like sense of humor in terms of you think maybe that something so kind of like steeped in the lore, or having to do with this fighting demons, wouldn't be as quippy as it can be. Like, you don't overuse it at all, but there's just enough like cultural references in here. I mean, I think Star Wars is referenced. There's a couple of other things that I thought were like just absolutely hilarious. They have a really, the characters who I think they were, or it's talked about somewhere that maybe they have a Catholic upbringing, but like a Jewish identity as well. But they
Yes.
also are very like right now in terms of like they know what's going on. They know like modern references. They're very kind of like they're very fun, and they both have like great personalities and senses of humor, and it's like a little quippy, and it's very funny. I thought at times was really like really good in terms of the humor of it, which I was kind of surprised by. I thought I was going to get more of a straight on like we're we're hunting evil, we're killing demons, we're doing all that stuff. But it is very, in like the modern sense of having a really good sense of humor without it, you know, being overused or feeling trite. I thought, well done.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot more. That was my editor, Ori, who was able to tone me down a little bit, because I liked having these sort of back and forth things with Catarina and Lucia. They kind of do their own thing. I did, and again, I don't want to give anything away, but there are certain plot points in the story that were not originally there, but Lucia drove it. She like drove it like a Mack truck through a, through a nitroglycerin plant. And I realized I couldn't ignore her instinct and like sort of, cause she loves things. She's extremely talented and she's funny and she knows her pop culture and stuff. And she has a good heart, but she's a little reckless. And so, that played into a lot of the things that were happening. And she was so reckless that it kind of wreaked havoc on some of my original plotting, because I was like, well, this, I need to keep the characters consistent. So this is where we're going to go. And I think you, since you read it, you probably know what I mean with some particular plot points involving
Yeah.
Lucia. Like the Star Trek stuff. I loved doing all that. I love Nimoy and
Yeah.
and so I wanted to play with those ideas a little bit and have those references. And of course, with Catarina, she's really into science, and you'll get a kick out of this, is that she is absolutely in love with Neil deGrasse Tyson. So that's going to be like a theme going on into into future stories of her love of Neil deGrasse Tyson. So, and her wanting to sort of explore space and the stars. So these kinds of things are all those little things that were just sort of really fun to sort of bring out. And, I'm glad you enjoyed that. That puts a smile on my face that you were able to pick all that up. Cause I sometimes I worry I put too much in, and, but yeah, it's I'm looking forward to sort of, the next book, as I'm working on it right now. I finished the first draft for the second book. It's going to mostly take place in Israel. So we're going to see a lot of Israeli, little spots, like Masada is going to show up. I don't know if you know Masada, but it's a very important landmark in Israel. It's a lot of IDF soldiers, a lot of people that are here. They take their oath on Masada. Masada was a place where they held off the Romans. The Jews held off the Romans, and they ended up making an ultimate sacrifice of saying they could be enslaved by the Romans and give up, or they could basically die and basically sacrifice themselves rather than become enslaved. And it's a huge thing in Jewish history, Jewish lore. And it's an amazing place to go if you ever come to Israel. It's up on this giant sort of cliff, and you can see it. And it's this massive sort of fort and base that Herod had built. And it's this, storages and all this stuff. And it's a really, so I say anyone who is interested, you look up Masada and you can see how interesting the place really is. But there's a lot of history here. So it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of show it all.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with that place in particular, but I will look it up. But yeah, certainly there is a lot of history in terms of the area of the world you're living in right now. I mean,
yes,
we don't have anything that old in America.
No. And look, in my concept, when I was a kid, grow up as a colonial and stuff, and you're like, that's 300, 400 years ago. And then you come here and it's like thousands and thousands. I could walk down the street down into this little area. If I dig deep enough, I might find some pottery shards of like the Maccabees. Cause I live in the city of the Maccabees, where the Hanukkah story comes from. That's where Modi'in is. So, that's such a cool thing to think about if you love history and these things, that there's just stuff buried everywhere.
Well, that's a good good point to kind of turn when you talk about like history, and because I'm kind of curious as to how you first developed an interest in this, like not just growing up Jewish, but also then taking it and getting into like this aspect of it, like kind of the learning about the demons, and learning about like these characters from like the Jewish tradition and Jewish perspective, and wanting to write about it. Like, did you how did that interest first develop? And also, like, how did you go about, researching it and learning about it for the comic?
Well, it's funny. I am very much, the characters of Catarina and Lucia are very much kind of me. I had a similar background. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather was born Jewish, and they're from Lithuania and Kovno. That's where they're in
Okay.
Kaunas. That's where they're originally from. But my grandfather converted to Protestantism. He was a Presbyterian when he married my grandmother. And so I had this magical Jewish history. I had no idea. I mean, I knew about it, but I didn't like know all the ins and outs. And we had all this backstory from my mom's side and my father's mother's side, books and books of like history going back to like the 1600s and the beginning of the US. And then with my dad's, with the Marvins, like it was nothing. I mean, literally, they were from somewhere in Lithuania. We have no idea where. And so it fascinated me, and I learned more. And then I met my wife, who was born in Rehovot here in Israel, and she moved to the States when she was 3. So, I just through her like found my Jewish roots, and I converted
Oh,
to
okay. So
Judaism. And
you didn't grow up
yeah,
Jewish.
no, I didn't.
Okay.
I grew up Protestant. So
Okay.
so all of that is very real. Like from the girl's perspective, like, they made their conversion a lot quicker than I did. I was an adult when I
Right.
converted, but
Okay.
it was a really wonderful thing. And I got to learn more, and we learned more about our history and my family that came from Kovno, which we just learned the town, and Kaunas, which is the modern, I think, name of the town in Lithuania, which, as you read, it plays very heavily into the book.
Oh, yeah.
So that that was very important to me to have those things and to build on those things, and that's what made it so personal, because I was sort of learning these things. And my wife was going through her own process. She already had a doctorate in medieval Jewish studies, so she was a master of these things already. And then she got her, then she became a rabbi. So she knows the law, she knows Talmud, she knows everything. So she is my editor on those things as I write. So all the authenticity is really from her. She keeps me straight. So it's been a wonderful kind of experience to be able to do all those things and keep all of those elements, and I wanted to I thought it would be really cool when you have all the different religions. Some people are like, "Ooh, I don't know if you want to touch that," but I'm like, I think it's beautiful, because you got this thing where they're trying to actually come together and fight these things from these different religions who have different ideas and how that would work. But that when they did do that, they were able to accomplish something, and now they kind of have to try to fix that or rebuild it. And that's one of the sort of the tenets of the story that I'm really kind of enjoying trying to kind of mold out and see where we go with it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, Jeff, that your background is like so interesting. That's
It's oh,
great.
I've got even one more for you that you're gonna enjoy this. So my wife, she has her background goes all the way back to the Hasidic movement, and she's directly related to the Baal Shem Tov. And if you know, when I say the Baal Shem Tov versus the organization of the Baal Shem Tov, there was a man who was called the Baal Shem Tov, and my wife is actually related to him, who that's what they were.
Wow.
They were demon hunters. They would do exorcisms, they would do all of these things, and this was one of those things. And I was like, well, once I learned that, I was like, oh, I have to do this. I have to. There's too many things coming together not to put all that together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's wild.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
I yeah.
can you imagine like a rabbi doing an exorcism? Because when you think of an exorcism, you think of the robes, and you think of Father. I can't think of his name, from The Exorcist, Max von Sydow,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
you're seeing with the Bible and all these things, and you're trying to think, what would a Jewish exorcism even look like? But they were doing these things. They had then they had the Age of Reason with Maimonides, and they kind of threw that to the side, and I was like, well, that's just Kabbalah. And the mainstream element kind of decided to move away from those things and be more of the rationalist, the reason, which is why Maimonides is such a big part of of that movement, to away from sort of the exorcisms and demons and things like that. So it's really interesting, to delve into those things in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by the actual history of it. And like, religion has always, I mean, growing up Catholic, and like I said, I went to Catholic grade school, high school, went to Catholic college. I went to St. Joe's in Philly, and
Okay. Oh,
you have,
okay.
yeah.
You had the whole thing.
Oh, I
St.
got the whole thing.
Joe's. Yeah.
I went to Salesianum in Wilmington for high school, so I got the oblates.
Oh,
For high
wow.
school, I got and I got the Jesuits at St. Joe's. So
Okay. You had the
you
hardcore.
have,
You were all there.
yeah, you had to take you had to take religion classes in college at St. Joe's, and I remember taking one called like Christian Tradition. I loved it. It was like one of my favorite classes. Um, Actually, the Jesuit who taught it told me that I did so well in the class. He asked if I ever thought about going to the seminary, which I hadn't, but I loved learning about how it all comes together. I mean, because like
Mhm.
studying Christianity throughout the years, throughout the centuries, and you're like, okay, well, how did we go from you know how did we go from a period of time in the story of Jesus to like putting the Bible together and doing all these
Sure.
things and breaking off from from Judaism and kind of creating like the foundations of Christianity. Like when you dig into it, you learn about things like, oh, the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent, and like, oh, these
Yeah.
just a bunch of guys who are sitting around like, what do we want to keep in? What do we want to keep out?
Right.
You know?
Is he
So
God or
I lo-
isn't he? Like, what's yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, I love that too. The Council of Nicaea is one of my favorite ones I love to use. It's like, well, they had a whole meeting about it. They discussed everything. They discussed whether or not he rose from the dead. They discussed whether or not he was, was he the son of God? Was he God? Like, they had all of these
yeah,
conversations in this very public meeting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's
That
that.
all that stuff's fascinating to me.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
do. Me too. I love all of it. And so, yeah. So like for you, like when you're interested in some of that stuff, when you look at, so a lot of these things, I mean, it was happening a lot earlier. Um, as it's sort of the age of prophecy, as they call it, when you had like, you know, I always joke with Tamara, it's just like, this was when they were, talking to burning bushes and doing all sorts of crazy things that we would never imagine they could do that, because they could do that then. But after the age of prophecy, that's ridiculous. Nobody would do any of that. So I always poke a little fun with that. I was like, yeah, it's a fire. Just sort of stopped. And, in Judaism, they don't have crazy, where God is like literally talking to people and saying, you are going to do this or you do that or smite this guy, smite, it's like none of that. He talks through other, weird ways, or Melachim or whatever, the angels, that kind of stuff. It's all very entertaining when you think of it from that context. But yeah, I think that's sort of where I took some of that. Like, so the Book of Enoch is very interesting because a lot of Christians take that Book of Enoch sort of more as the gospel, as part of the Christian gospel, rather than Jews. Jews don't usually look at the Book of Enoch because it does have a lot of Christian allegory that I think they've taken from that to put into their own. And so Jews kind of don't like some elements of it. I think like the fallen angel element, Jews don't typically like that. That part, like the Watchers, that part, it doesn't always mesh in. So it's considered not really part of like Jewish canon, but they can kind of do that because Enoch kind of was before they were Jews at all. They were not considered Jews. This was before Abraham. So it's,
Oh, okay.
this is like, he's the great grandfather of Noah. So, when you think about, he's like, and like, Methuselah, when you think of the terms like that, you didn't have any of it, God was sort of a concept of a singular God, but there was no religion around it. So it's
Hmm.
very interesting with that stuff. And so I kind of like to go back to that part. And that's where like Enoch and a lot of those things sort of come into the story in that way. So it
Okay.
can be for everybody. It's not necessarily, just the Jewish part. It's kind of, representative of all, because, it all kind of spawned from Judaism anyway.
Yeah. And every religion, at least most of the major ones that we know the most about, right? I would say the average person, has
Right.
heard of or knows about, like, it has some type of, whether or not we want to call it mythology or tradition,
Sure.
about demons or evil spirits or like whatever it might be. And this comic is very accessible, even though it talks about some pretty, um, like lore heavy stuff. I feel like and a lot of that is propelled by, RD's work, which is, just really fun and, like I said, like high octane action. So it's a really great looking, comic book and very accessible. Like this isn't for, oh, I know nothing about, Judaism, or I don't know anything about Christian tradition or demons. Like, no, this is a comic that's, I think, very approachable for everybody, and even has a lot of that, history in it. It's very accessible. It's very fun. It's a very good, oh, this is what comic books, this is what they do really, really well. Stories like this,
I
trying to
appreciate
put, I mean, you could put something like this in, TV or movies, but it would cost a lot of money to make.
it. Yes, it would.
you know?
I can't imagine what my
I
shit
mean,
demon would look like. It would feel like,
God.
God.
And can we just talk about the panel where the one priest is in the stall and all the flies come out of his that is so good. It is so good.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's
I thought it would be really, because I knew the imagery was out there of the Kevin Smith from Dogma with the Golgotha.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wanted, I couldn't avoid some things, but I kind of like, I knew I wanted to have it be a big giant sludge monster at some point, but that's not its only form. It's like these sort of bees and like just covered in whatever and filth, and they act sort of like, it's funny. I kept thinking of like Transformers, like Shockwave and all the things that come out of Shockwave. Where it's like the thing out of the chest. So I kept thinking like from the hierarchy element, the shit demons or the bar Sharika pandas, they kind of act as spies, and they can kind of like move in and out of places and without being seen and gather information and do things, but then they can turn into this giant sludge monster, like a Decepticon, like the Destructicons, with the,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
you
I know
come
what you
into
mean.
a giant. So I don't know. I kept thinking like Transformers when I was thinking it, to try to sort of not do it in the same way as Kevin Smith. So that's sort of
Yeah.
like the auspice of creating it that way. But yeah, I wanted to have more fun with that, and have it at the Vatican bathroom, because whenever you get to see a Vatican bathroom in a comic book.
Yeah, I can't think of another comic where we get to see the Vatican bathroom. I've been to the Vatican. I can't remember what the bathroom actually looks like at the Vatican, but
I couldn't find anything. I just like, okay, we'll just make it like a European bathroom as much as humanly possible.
yeah. Yeah, I did a study abroad in Rome in law school, and I
Oh,
had a
wow.
and we weren't too far from like from the Vatican or
Okay.
from like St. Peter's, and one of my law school classmates, his, I want to say, godfather was uh a priest or somebody that was working at the Vatican, and
Right.
like 7 of us got like a tour of just him. He like set us up with a tour all
Wow.
through the Vatican. And yeah, personally for me, nothing turned me off of religion more than seeing like one of the former pope's treasure chest from like the 14 or 1500s and just being like, "Oh, okay, that doesn't seem very Christian-y."
The
But
Concord stuff. Well, that's a running joke, which I'm sure you picked up, right? Which is
yeah.
the secret Vatican vault that has all the Jewish stuff in it, and it's like a recurring theme where they constantly have to steal from it to find all the artifacts that are probably, hidden
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
underneath this sort of catacombs of crazy treasures and things that are in there.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So
like, I mean, but all the stuff that we learn, like because I mean, there's so many sculptures and artworks and like
right,
all kinds of things in the Vatican. Like from a historical perspective, it's like amazing. But then, you know, and just to each their own. And like I said,
sure,
I went to Catholic school for however many years, but yeah, like when you see a painting and you're like, it's depicting like the Pope's army, like
right,
at one point in time, like the Pope had an army, like that's how tied in the
yeah,
Catholic Church and the Vatican was to the government at the time. I mean, not to have like a historical lesson here outside of your wonderful comic book, but yeah, it is remarkable to kind of be able to see that stuff. But
yeah. No,
in any event,
no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was really fun to kind of, and I want to definitely have more fun with that as we go. And like, what other crazy things are in this mysterious vault that they won't admit exists?
yeah. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I remember when I was there in Rome, like there's so many rumors
So
about
many.
from like what is hidden at the
Mhm.
Vatican, like whether or not they're I mean, I don't know if this was rumor, if anyone if it was a story about how like Hadrian's tomb is not too far
Mhm.
from the Vatican. It's like the
Right.
Castle San Angelo. And there's all
Right.
kinds of stories that like there's tunnels that lead from the Vatican to the Castle San Angelo and
Right.
it's just like it's remarkable. Any place, that like Rome, like
Right.
Italy, like Israel that has this like just hundreds and hundreds of years,
Right.
just centuries of history are just kind of remarkable places. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what you've done, you and RD have done, the rest of the creative team. Like this was a wonderful read. I had a ton of fun, and the action scenes, as I've said several times now, are incredible. I mean, I thought that this was wonderful, and I can't
Thank
wait
you.
for more. So I'm excited to hear that there's going to be more of this. But yeah, I'll put links in the show notes so
Okay.
listeners. When is the book? Is it available now?
So they are being shipped to the States. We'll see how long that takes. But yeah, we have a date. It's March 18th is the on sale date. We have it on for pre-sale at our Gollum Press site, which is gollum-press.com. It's very simple. You can check it out. We've got some posters that are available now. We have the Shemaim poster. We have the poster for the main cover. We have a couple of shirts. Demon Triumvirate from the book. We had a couple of the images from the book. And yeah, we have the demon plushies. We have a green and a brown one. They're that are our official Shemosh demon plushies. With their own character cards that come with them. They have a certificate. This is one of the ones that we have that has the name of their original name and a little backstory on how they became a Shemosh in Moloch's army. So they're kind of fun little cards that we have with those.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's great. Yeah, I'll have links in the show notes so folks can,
Okay.
go to your website. They can go to Gollum Press. They can check all this out. But yeah, listeners, I mean, this is a ton of fun. I'd say if you, if you like, things like supernatural, but also, stuff like Lucifer, but also, I mean, this is just a really fun action comic on one level, with some really strong characters. But if you're even remotely interested in demon hunting or things that have that type of religious or supernatural bent to it, I mean, this is just a wonderful comic. I had a fantastic time reading it, and I just thought it was just really great. And RD's artwork, the colors, the lettering, everything about this just kind of sings. So I highly recommend it, listeners. But yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks
I
for
really
having me, man.
appreciate it.
Hey man, I can sit and talk this lore stuff all day long, man. I can see you do too, so I love it. It's great.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. And it's like fascinating, like kind of like about your background and like, hopefully I'd love to have you come back on and, whenever book 2 is ready to go, please, or if you have anything else coming out, I would love to have you
Absolutely.
back. We can talk lore more and
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
so Thank you
Yeah, no,
very much.
I will say this: the one thing that we are sort of doing because of the Jewish holidays, we're doing lore stories that we're going to be putting up. They're going to be more on like short story novel form, very short, sort of short stories that I'll be putting up in the coming months. And of course, the one that's coming up this next week will be Tub Vishrat, which is about the trees. And it's going to have a lore story that's going to tie into Hunters of Sheydim, and then we're going to do Purim in March. So it's I've got it. My buddy Jeffrey Zackel is a really great artist. Is going to draw some of this stuff, and it, like I said, it's going to have some images for it, and they'll be on the website. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get it sooner. So because they'll be, I'm gonna send it through the newsletter first, and then we'll put them on the website. So
awesome.
So sign up and check them out.
All right. Yeah, I'll have links to the show notes for all of that. So yeah, that's fantastic. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Listeners, please, check out Hunters of Sheydim. Check out the links. It is really a fantastic comic book. As always, shout out to my brother Bobby, the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes. I know Bobby, who also, was an altar boy like I was, and went to Catholic grade school and high school like I did. I think will absolutely love this book. But yeah, rate, review us, do all the things they tell you to do about podcasts. It really does help. We appreciate it. You can find me on Blue Sky and TikTok sometimes making videos about comics. So yeah. And anyone on the, in the South or East Coast, as we record this, we're getting hit with a snowstorm. So stay warm, please. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Good night, and I'll see you next time.